Today we will be finding the volume of rectangular prisms and pyramids. Please make sure that you are open to lesson 10.1 in your book so that you can write down things as we write them down. After each section that we work on, I'll tell you to stop and then work on that part of your worksheet. You have, for this particular section, the worksheet that you have is 5 pages, but I think it's about 4 sections. So, let's start with finding the volume of a rectangular prism. So the way that you're going to see this listed, I'm going to zoom out a little bit, is volume equals big B, which stands for the area of the base, times the height. So in a rectangular prism, the base is a rectangle. And the formula for the area of a rectangle is length times width. So we're basically going to be finding length times width, and then it's the area of the base times the height, so times the height. So in the past you've probably learned that the volume of a rectangular prism is length times width times height. And that's basically what you're doing. The area of the base is 12 times 15 times the height, which is 7. So in this example, you're going to be doing 12 times 15 times 7, and all of that multiplies out to 1,260, and it's cubic millimeters. And another way you could write this would be 1,260 millimeters cubed. That's a little 3 as an exponent. On our reflect question on the next page, it says, what if you know the volume and the height of a prism? How would you find the area of the base? Well, that formula that we were using is volume equals the area of the base times the height. Well, if you want to find the area of the base when you know the height, you would divide the volume by the height. That cancels out your heights, and it isolates big B, which is the area of the base. So you would do the volume divided by the height. So looking now at your turn number 2, we're going to use the formula, volume equals the area of the base times the height, to find the volume of a gift box that is 3.5 inches high. So right there we have the height, 7 inches long, and 6 inches wide. We're going to use the length and the width to find the area of the base. So the area of the base is the length times the width, and volume is the area of the base times the height. But basically what this boils down to is we're going to do length times width times height. And every time you're finding the volume of a rectangular prism, you're going to do length times width times height. So we're going to do 3.5 times 7 times 6, and that is going to multiply to 147. So it's 147 inches cubed. At this point, you have a worksheet where you're finding the volume of a rectangular prism. And again, right here, length times width times height. That's what you're going to do in all of them. On your STAR test, it might give you the formula, area of the base times the height. But again, remember the area of the base is just the area of a rectangle, which is length times width. So, pause the video here and work on that part of the worksheet, and when you finish that part of the worksheet, you can continue on to the next part of the video. Next, we're going to be looking at a net. That is a 2-dimensional pattern of shapes that can be folded into a 3-dimensional figure. So what you're going to be doing in a few minutes is you're going to be looking at a net drawn out on a piece of paper. And you're going to make a prediction. You're going to predict whether that net can fold into a cube or whether that net cannot fold into a cube. And then you're actually going to have an opportunity to cut those out, fold them along each line, and see if they actually connect to make a cube. So, in this Explore Activity number 1, step 1, says to copy them down on graph paper and cut them along the line. So you can take a moment, you can pause it here, and you can get a piece of paper out and you can trace it from your book, cut it out, fold it along, and see what happens. Okay, if you want to take a few minutes to do that, pause it right now, get that piece of paper, trace them, cut them out, and fold them. Okay. So, net A. Net A will fold into a cube. Okay, it says one of these nets can be folded along the black lines to make a cube. Step 1 says which one will not make a cube. Well, net A does, net B will not. So there we're going to write net B will not make a cube. Step 2 says see if you can find another net that can be folded into a cube. Well, at this point you're going to get out some scissors and you're going to get out that worksheet and you're going to actually cut those out, and that's going to give you several different ways that a net is drawn, and of course it has 6 squares on it because a cube is a 6-sided figure. So lots of different ways that those are arranged, and some of them will work and some of them will not work. Okay, so we're not really going to fill in the rest of steps 2 and 3, but you take a moment and you can help each other with this as well if y'all are having some trouble. Okay, so hopefully at this point you have made the cubes on the second part of your worksheets for today, and then I got something out of order here, so if you'll for a moment skip over the triangular or the rectangular pyramid page and go to the next page, which has to do with more nets, and they're going to be different shaped nets. So that's actually going to be the next worksheet that you complete, and you're going to have to try to name the figure that is shown from that net. So let's look at number 3, which is a little different. It's not, you're going to have some different shapes here, but it says what shapes would appear in a net for a rectangular prism that is not a cube? And then how many of these shapes will there be? Okay, so if you're going to have a rectangular prism that's not a cube, they're not going to be squares. A cube has to be made of squares. A rectangular prism would just be made of rectangles. And how many rectangles would there be? There's still going to be 6 because this prism is still going to be 6-sided. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and I'll review with 4 and 5. It says, how do you know that each net cannot be folded into a cube without actually cutting it and folding it? And so if you look at number 4, there's a big problem with number 4. There's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares. We need 6. Okay, so not enough squares. And the problem with number 5 is that when you try to fold these, you're not going to have a top and a bottom. The only way to fold them isn't going to make a cube. It can actually make a 6-sided figure. It actually end up being a hexagon. So they cannot be in a row. Now, there are other shapes that we can have. For example, in number 6, it says if you draw a net for a cylinder such as a can, how many 2-dimensional geometric shapes would this net have? So think about the top and the bottom of a can. The top and the bottom are in the shape of a circle. So there's going to be circles, and there has to be 2 of them because there's going to be a top and a bottom. But now think about the side of that can. Think about a label that goes around a can. If you were to cut that label off and lay it out flat, that would be a rectangle. And then there's just one rectangle. So pause it here for a moment and go to the worksheet. Like I said, skip the pyramid one and do the nets worksheet first. And you're going to name the shape that's created from those nets. And feel free to help each other if you need it. And so the final thing that we're going to be doing in this section is going to be the volume of a rectangular pyramid. So I want you to look at all of these shapes right here. A pyramid, or all these pyramids right here, a pyramid is a three-dimensional shape. It's going to have a base that's a polygon, so a 3, 4, 5, and on sided figure on the bottom, and it's going to come to a point up at the top. So all pyramids are going to be made of triangles. We name the pyramid from its base. So right here, the base is a rectangle. So we call it a rectangular pyramid. Here we have a base that's a triangle, so we call that one a triangular pyramid. Pentagonal pyramid. Okay, and we can name many different other ones up to any different size of number of sides of that shape on the bottom. As long as they come to a point at the top, then it's a pyramid. So in this pyramid, the bottom is called the base. So you have your base right here, and then your height goes from the point at the top down to a straight down to a right angle at the bottom. We call that the height. So there's a couple things we need to know for a pyramid to find the volume of it. We need to know the area of the base and then the height of the object. We are going to skip over Explore Activity 2 some. I'm just going to kind of explain it a little bit since I'm not there to show you this. But a pyramid is cut out of a prism. Okay, so when we're working with the volume of a pyramid, we're actually going to be taking the volume of its corresponding prism and we're going to basically divide it by 3. Okay, because in this Explore activity, what they're talking about is that if you took a prism and cut a pyramid out of it and took that pyramid and filled it up with, I think in this case they use beans, and filled in that prism, it would actually do it 3 times. So we're going to end up dividing by 3 in the end. It's like finding the volume of the prism and dividing that by 3. So let's look at the your turn. So in the your turn it says the volume of a rectangular prism is 4.5 inches cubed. Okay, so we have 4.5 inches cubed. What is the volume of a rectangular pyramid with a congruent base and the same height? We're not worried about what the height is or what the base is exactly. We just know that if I took the volume of the prism, which is 4.5, and I divide it by 3, that's going to give me the volume of the pyramid. So we're going to have to change these into improper fractions. So 2 times 4 is 8. And 8 plus 1 is 9, so that's 9 over 2, divided by 3 over 1. Remember that we have to change a division problem into a multiplication problem. The first one stays the same, but 3 over 1 becomes 1 over 3. I can simplify this one before I multiply. The 9 and the 3 can both be divided by a 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 9 divided by 3 is 3. So this gives me the fraction 3 over 2, which changes to 1.5. So this would be 1.5 inches cubed. So you take the volume of its corresponding prism and divide it by 3. So looking at solving some volume problems, let's look at the formula that they've given us here for the volume of a rectangular pyramid. So it's going to be 1/3 the area of the base times the height. So to simplify this a little bit, we basically need to do length times width times height divided by 3. So we're going to multiply length, width, and height together, and then divide that by 3. Let's skip over example A because that was the volume of a rectangular prism. We have already done that. And let's look at B. A glass paperweight in the shape of a rectangular pyramid has a base that is 4 inches by 3 inches and a height of 5 inches. Find the volume of the paperweight. So, I told y'all to simplify it into something length times width times height divided by 3. We got that because length times width is the area of the rectangular base times the height, and then that 1/3 just means we divide by 3. So let's do that. 4 times 3 times 5, and all of that's going to be divided by 3. So we have to multiply everything on the top first. 4 times 3 is 12, and 12 times 5 is 60, and 60 divided by 3 is 20. So 20 cubic inches is the volume of the paperweight. So just remember, length times width times height, do all those together, and then divide by 3. And we're going to skip over number 10 for now, but we'll do number 11. A square pyramid has a base edge of 5.5 yards and a height of 3.25 yards. Find the volume of the pyramid to the nearest tenth. This one only gives you 2 numbers, but the base is a square. So that means that the edges are 5.5 and 5.5. So when we do the length times width times height divided by 3, we're really doing 5.5 times 5.5 times 3.25, and all of that gets divided by 3. So let's work that out. We're going to do 5.5 times 5.5 times 3.25, which is 14.25, and then do 14.25 divided by 3, which is 4.75 yards cubed. I'm going to zoom out on all that because I don't know if all of that was caught on the video, so make sure you've gotten everything that we've written down on this page. And that concludes the video lesson for 10.1. If this was not finished on Thursday, you can work on it a little bit more on Friday. Friday's lesson's a little bit shorter, so if you have any questions, you can ask the teacher for help.